I still remember that day because I honestly wasn't planning on meeting anyone. I'm 35 years old, a single dad, and I live just outside Dallas, Texas. I own a few companies, so people call me a billionaire. But I don't usually tell anyone that. Most days I wear regular clothes because I like being treated like a normal person. That Saturday, I was at a shopping mall to buy some new clothes for my 8-year-old son. He was spending the weekend with his grandparents, so I decided to shop alone. I had just walked out of one store when I noticed a young woman walking a few steps ahead of me. She looked around 25. She was carrying a few shopping bags and talking on her phone. As she kept walking, her small brown purse slipped off her shoulder and landed on the floor. She didn't even notice. I picked it up and called out, "Excuse me, I think you dropped your purse." She turned around quickly with a surprised look on her face. "Oh my God," she said. "I didn't even realize it." "Thank you so much." I handed it to her. She smiled and said, "You're a really kind person." "Most people would probably just keep walking," I laughed. "I think anyone should return something that isn't theirs." She checked inside the purse for a second and everything was still there. "I really appreciate it," she said. "My apartment is actually just a few minutes from here. If you're free sometime, I'd love to buy you lunch to say thank you." I wasn't expecting that. I smiled and said, "Sure, I'd like that." We exchanged phone numbers before going our separate ways. The next afternoon, she texted me her address. When I got there, I knocked on the door. A few seconds later, she opened it. She was wearing a simple satin nightdress because, as she later explained, she had just finished cleaning her apartment and wasn't expecting me to arrive a little early. She looked embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she laughed. "I thought you'd come 15 minutes later." I smiled. "It's okay." "You look fine." She invited me inside. Her apartment wasn't fancy at all. It was small but very clean. You could tell she worked hard to take care of everything herself. She brought out lunch that she had cooked herself. While we were eating, we started talking about life. After a while, she became quiet. She looked down at her plate before saying, "Can I tell you something personal?" I nodded. Of course. She took a deep breath. "I was married for 5 years. I didn't interrupt. My husband wasn't a good man. At first, everything seemed perfect, but after a year, he became violent. He would get angry over small things. He hit me more times than I can count." She paused for a moment. I stayed because I kept thinking he'd change. But he never did. "I'm sorry," I said. "Eventually I filed for divorce. It wasn't easy, but it was the best decision I ever made. I've been living alone ever since." I respected how honest she was. Then she smiled and asked, "What about you?" I laughed a little. "My story is different. I was married too. My wife passed away several years ago. Since then, I've been raising my son by myself." She looked genuinely sorry. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. "It was," I admitted. After a short silence, she asked, "So what do you do for work?" I usually avoid that question because people sometimes act differently after hearing the answer. "I own a few businesses." "What kind of businesses?" I smiled. "A little bit of everything." She laughed. "That's a very mysterious answer." Finally, I decided to tell her. "I own several companies. Financially, I've been very fortunate." She looked confused. "Like, how fortunate?" I answered honestly. "I'm a billionaire." She stared at me for a few seconds. Then she laughed. "You're joking." "I'm not." I showed her one of the business articles about me on my phone. Her eyes became wide. "I can't believe it." Then she surprised me again. She smiled and handed my phone back. "Well, yesterday you were just the nice guy who returned my purse." That answer meant more to me than she probably realized. She didn't suddenly become excited because of money. She treated me exactly the same. Over the next several months, we spent more time together. She met my son. Instead of trying to impress him with expensive gifts, she played board games with him, helped him with homework, and baked cookies together. One evening, my son pulled me aside and whispered, "Dad, I really like her." That was the moment I knew this relationship was different. About a year later, I asked her to marry me. Proposed during a quiet walk in the same shopping mall where we first met. She laughed the moment she realized where we You planned this, didn't you? I did. When I asked the question, she didn't even let me finish. Yes, we got married a few months later in a small ceremony with family and close friends. Life wasn't perfect after that. We argued. Sometimes we disagreed about little things, but we respected each other, and that's what made the marriage work. A few years later, we welcomed our first child together, then another. Our house became louder, messier, and much happier. Sometimes we joke that our family keeps getting bigger every year. People often ask us how we met. They expect some incredible love story, but honestly, it all started because someone dropped a purse in a shopping mall. If I hadn't looked down at the right moment, our lives probably never would have crossed. Funny how one small act of kindness can completely change your future.